many others. I'm Mark Halperin, your host for this romp through today's political events, whether you're watching on YouTube or here on the two-way platform. We're delighted to have you here. This is a forum for understanding, peace, and love, and exchange of ideas and education to figure out what's going on in the presidential race. We will guide you through that. We're going to talk, for one thing, about the fact that as I run through today's daybook, neither presidential candidate is doing a thing today in public that we know about. The vice president has no public events. She's meeting with staff internally. I bet you she's working with some very smart people on her economic plan. And Joe Biden, Donald Trump's not doing anything. He's got a rally in North Carolina tomorrow. President Biden and the First Lady are going to New Orleans to do a cancer event. J.D. Vance also has no public events. He's got a Michigan rally tomorrow. The big activity today, everyone will be happy to hear, meaning Tim will be happy to hear, is Governor Walz, who's speaking to AFSCME in Los Angeles and doing a fundraiser in Newport Beach. The AFSCME event is 3:35 Eastern time. That's about it in terms of events. So, guys, I want to start with this question. Lots of people on the left have been criticizing Donald Trump for not doing events and saying there's something wrong with him, that he's not campaigning. Today, neither of them is campaigning. There are not many days left here. So are they resting? Can't they meet with the staff on a plane and go someplace and do a rally in a battleground state? Explain that to me. You've both worked on campaigns. Why aren't they doing events?
Yeah, I mean, I think to start, you have to look at where we've been over the last week. The Harris-Walz team did 5 states over 5 days, or over 4 days. So there's a lot of activity there. I do understand a little bit of the criticism of Trump over the period since the debate. So going back to the end of June, I think we've seen him do 8 rallies or so. And of course, he's mixed in things like the Musk interview last night. But, separate question. I don't think that's actually worth it or counts. I think we're just in a unique period right now where we've rolled out the vice president on the Democratic side. We're walking into the convention. There's convention planning happening. To your point, there's probably some policy rollout planning that's happening. Tim Walz is out there.
Yeah, but let me stop you. Let me just stop you before I ask Sean to weigh in. Yeah. I'm not criticizing. I'm just trying to understand and help everybody else understand. Yeah. Your friend Tim Walz says we'll sleep when we're dead. Why not? Why not fly to Philadelphia and eat a hoagie and come back? Like why not? It would take her 2 hours.
Right. Well, it's not, first, it's not like his schedule doesn't have stuff on it. Second, I think there is
but why? But he should be doing it too. Why doesn't he get on Trump Force One and fly to Atlanta and do an event?
Yeah, I mean,
just asking.
For sure.
Just asking. Why not?
But she's also, she's still also the vice president. She's doing some work at the White House. We'll see what that is. It's not publicly advised. But I think to your point, Mark, it is. Are they not campaigning? I think that critical question happens after Labor Day, right? Where it's go, 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 go. I don't think it's odd the week before a convention. I don't think it's odd to have a down day.
All right. Sean, if I were them, I'd sleep when I'm dead and I'd go to Philadelphia or Atlanta. What am I missing?
I think you're correct in the sense that there is a public perception issue right now that needs to be addressed, right? The people expect to see the candidate on the trail. That being said, I mean, to Tim's point, having been there before, both there are a lot, not just meetings internally with staff. There are fundraisers that don't appear on schedules. There are calls, and I mean, so donors and things like that don't appear on a public schedule. I know there is a robust schedule of donor meetings that I'm not going to get into, but I will just tell you that it's not like he's sitting around.
He's not. He's doing a lot of donor meetings. I still don't understand why they both need to do donor meetings when George W. Bush in 2000 proved that you can tell donors, do events without me. Let me campaign for president. Separate issue. Her economic plan is due out any day now. Tim first and Sean again. What's the goal of releasing this? It's obviously to show she's got economic ideas, that she feels the pain inflation. Is a goal to also appear more centrist? And Sean, my question for you is, what is the Trump campaign likely doing to prepare for the release of that plan, if anything?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think part of it is that the Harris campaign wants some definition around an economic plan or an economic policy that is not a continuation of the Biden-Harris administration. I think, Democrats for a very long time say, well, if we look back and inflation's coming down and the jobs numbers are good and the stock market is good, you can pull yourself out of a little bit of a defensive posture about your record. If you have more of a forward-looking policy or something that looks different, or you can say, this is how my vision is slightly different than the current administration. So I don't know what that policy is going to look like exactly. I think it'll have something to do with lowering costs for middle-class families. I know that's extremely broad, but I think that's the strategy there, is you want to be able to point to something forward instead of just looking back. We have a good contrast going forward, inflationary tax cuts from the Trump administration that are for the rich, but it will give her something to point to that's positive as well.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of a danger there, right? They've got to be careful about how much daylight they put between her and Biden. The question easily becomes, why haven't you done that now? Why haven't you articulated anything now? And that will be something that will go. I mean, if you know the solution to help the economy and so many people are suffering, why are you waiting? That's got to be the fundamental response from the Trump campaign right now. Two is to see how much of this is different than Biden. How much of it is centrist versus further to the left? How much of it is a flip-flop? I mean, so I think you're going to your question, Mark, there's going to be a lot of analysis. How much of this is in contrast to what you said in 2020? How much of it is similar to Biden? How much of it isn't getting done right now? How much of it is cribbed from somebody else, no tax on tips or whatever. So I think it's to the broader question. I will be intrigued to see which angle, if it's one or many, that they go after it today.
Okay. We want to talk about between now and the convention. So there's like 5 days. Clearly, her economic plan is going to take up some space. Trump has 2 rallies scheduled between now and then. Tim, if you're the Democrats, which you are, what are your goals this week? Just launch the economic plan cleanly and kind of tease that and build excitement for the convention? Are those the main goals?
Yeah, I honestly do think that's it. I think it's launch the economic plan, get some positive press around that for a day or two. You head into the weekend where there's going to be a lot of churn and excitement building about the DNC. Press is going to start to arrive in Chicago. You're going to see a bunch of information come out about the schedule, speakers, things like that. And then much like the RNC, we walk into 4 days of an infomercial for the Democratic Party, where if all goes well, you've produced a really sleek program for people to consume that, is absent a ton of contrast. I will say it'll be interesting to see if Trump campaigns during that period. It's like kind of a very old norm that was broken, I think, by President Obama, that like you don't campaign during the other team's convention. But it'll also be interesting to see if because Trump feels like he needs to try to further define Democrats, that he's going to go out there and hit the trail as well.
Sean, it was said when the switch was made from Biden to Harris that the fight was on and the next 3 weeks would be critical and she had to be defined. And now, I mean, I would say you'd be hard pressed to say the Team Trump has won the definition wars. You'd probably say they've lost it so far. And some Trump people are saying, well, we don't really need to define her now. She's got her convention. We'll define her after Labor Day. So is it, obviously it's not all or nothing, but is it the case that given the fast approaching DNC and the media swoon continues, they can't define her till after Labor Day, even if they want to?
No, I think the Trump campaign put out a new ad last night that is largely what a lot of us have been talking about. It was her words, her ad, her thing. I thought that was hopefully that's the reset that they're looking for to get everyone focused on the issues. I think it might be slower, and we're not as immediate, so it might be more of a slow burn. But I think they're hitting their stride right now.
Why is it that we don't know? Why is no news organization? Maybe you guys want to ask me this, but I don't know the answer. Why is it that we don't know what's on the air in the battleground states and how much is being spent?
That's an interesting thing. We used to have much better reporting. I mean,
yeah,
from CMAG and others that would put that out. And I don't know why, whether it's just it hasn't happened. I'm looking at Alex smiling. He might have some insight into that. But there was, there
should be a chart every day that says, here are the 7 battleground states. Here are the 38 media markets. Here's what's on the air. Here's how much money's behind it. Here are the adjacencies they're buying. Now, I also want to know what's on like the weird channel at the gym and what's on digital, but broadcast TV is still a big deal. And I got no clue. And I don't understand why in the digital age and the information age, we don't just all know that.
Mark, that's a section for Wide World of News. That's like a new
thing. But a section. If someone would provide me the data, maybe somebody on here would provide me the data.
That's the key. I mean, we used to have CMAG and such that would do that, and everybody would push it out. And I think, part of the problem is that there is a person that is behind that compiling it, and if they stop doing it, I mean, there was a whole person when I was at Newsmax that did TV ratings and pushed them out publicly, and then they stopped doing it. And so,
Right. All right. If you want in the conversation, particularly if you're new to the platform, please raise your hand and we'll call on as many of you as we can. As always, we're about peace, love, and understanding here. So if you want to insult Tim or Sean, please don't. If you want to insult me, that's probably fine. But we'd love to get your questions, comments. As always, tell us where you're from, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind. And we'll start with Deborah. Deborah, unmute, please. Go ahead.
Hey, can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Welcome to Two Way in the morning meeting.
So much.
We don't have merch, but we got everything else. Go ahead.
Soon, I hope, because I'll buy it. This place is phenomenal. I'm from New York City and I'm politically homeless, and this has been such a remarkable space. So thank you. I'm a lifelong center Democrat whom the far left has pushed center right, at least locally. But nationally, I would never and could never vote for a Republican, least of all Donald Trump, which brings me, I guess, to my question, which is about policy versus personality. The right continues to make a big deal about Harris's demeanor, her laugh, her word salad, her readiness for the job, particularly if there's an international issue. So they're going to vote for Donald Trump. I get that the president only has control of so much, and that Republican policies are what drive more informed Republican voters. They say they'll hold their noses and vote for Trump because another 4 years of Democratic policies are too dangerous. But we watched while the world laughed at us when Trump was in office, while people tuned in to be entertained, as Elon put it, not governed. We watched as he put Betsy DeVos in charge of education, which I guess we don't have to worry about now that he's going to abolish the Department of Education. So my question, maybe for Sean, I suppose, is even if you're concerned about policy over personality, how are the risks associated with a no publicity is bad publicity kind of Trump who brings attention for all the wrong reasons worth it in an international scenario, in a national scenario? I don't see how it's worth it, even if it brings down inflation or, where is the doomsday scenario?
So Deborah, I'm trying to
thank you, Deborah.
Can I just drill down on this a little? I'm trying to understand. So is it that you're concerned about that there's too much bluster, or I'm trying, what is the exact issue that you are trying to get at here, right? Is it that you don't like how much he talks about things, or that you don't like the way that he does it?
So I'm concerned with the fact that I think last night, and I'm not sure why you guys are talking about last night, why it seemed like he couldn't come up with the word Zionist. He couldn't come up with Tim Walz's name in the previous press conference. I don't think that he is now 8 years older than he was before when all of this was an issue. So all of the criticism of Joe Biden and his readiness and his ability and his cognitive abilities somehow goes out the window when we see.
So, but is this a question about the media coverage or something else?
No, about Republican voters, because I come here to
Republican voters.
Okay,
right.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Deborah, thank you.
I would just, a couple of things off the top of we mentioned this before. I actually thought Trump was disciplined by not mentioning Walz. And without getting into a lot of details, there were a lot of discussions about not going into the Walz record. I'll leave that aside because I think there was a lot of pitfalls potentially from that. So that was a good thing. In fact, I talked to a couple of the journalists that were in that room, and I said, I can't believe not one of you in 37 questions in 67 minutes asked Trump about Tim Walz. And they go, I know, we all missed it. So you want to blame anyone. It was the media that didn't ask him a single question about Tim Walz. When it comes to the demeanor, and this is why I was trying to ask you the question, look, I think, and it was Alex and a couple other people several meetings ago that used the word chaos, and I think it's a very apt one. There's a lot of times when you can look back at Trump's White House and say there was a ton of chaos. Okay, well, what did it yield? I would argue that I was very proud of the results that came of that domestically and internationally. The world was a calmer, safer place. There's no question about that. And so the question is, where do you want the chaos? I would argue that you might have less tweets out of the Biden White House, but the world is full of chaos right now. You name the region and there's a ton of it. We are less safe and I think less prosperous, both domestically and abroad. And so the question is, from a Republican standpoint, I would rather take the results and worry about mean tweets some other time.
I just very quickly, yeah, no, just very quickly on that. I think Deborah makes a good point. I think even if you want to make, I think the most, rosy case for the years of the Trump administration, people still feel that chaos was here at home, and I think that is like a backstop for a lot of voters considering Trump. Yeah, I mean, like to the Musk thing, I know that was last night, but I also see in the chat a lot of people asking about it. The reason I said I didn't think it was a good play is because if you believe the numbers, he had about 1 million people on. He could do that in a call into a Fox interview. How many of those people were bots? How many of those people were global? It was a very long, meandering conversation. So, Deborah, to your point there too. I mean, he did not seem entirely with it. It sounded like the first day of braces. I don't know what was going on with the audio. So I'm not sure it was a good use of time.
Oh, can I, since I know a lot of people are asking about that. I just want to say that I thought the interesting thing about that last night was, again, tech issues aside, I think the idea that, I mean, you contrast that what's going on now, you've got a candidate that won't talk to the media. And here he is from whatever it was, 8:40 to 11 something at night, him just going off for a few hours is a huge contrast, right? I also thought that there was something, like, as a guy that's been around him for almost 10 years, I appreciated the conversation. That was what Elon was trying to go for last night versus, quote, an interview. I think that we talk about this platform a lot. There's a much better conversation that goes on when you don't feel like you're under the gun to answer something in 8 seconds or that it's an adversarial relationship. I appreciated the conversation last night, and it wasn't just about the substance. It was about the tone and tenor and the ability to hear a little bit more and expand a conversation as opposed to a quick soundbite of an issue. One of the things that I will just lastly say about Trump, that he's not a politician. He didn't come up through the system. He wasn't a state rep and a congressman and a governor. And I think that's one of the things that continues to be extremely attractive about him, is that he is much more authentic, and that people realize that this is a guy who's seeing the world as a president through a very different lens than somebody who came up through the world of corporate lobbyists and special interests, et cetera.
I will take one final takeaway from the Musk interview is I don't think Musk has a future as a journalist, would be my.
Yeah. Okay. Or maybe not a traditional journalist.
Yeah.
Anne is here. I'll take the liberty of introducing Anne because she's a Wide World of News reader. She's from Alabama, Roll Tide, and she is somewhat of a Trump supporter. Anne, go ahead.
Yes, I am. And I want to say, Sean, you just said everything that I think every day about this race, about Trump, about what it's all about. And that's why I let you be my advocate every day. I emailed Mark this morning and said, so many days recently I've thought about raising my hand, but there's just been such an overwhelmingly anti-Trump vibe going on these calls. This was more than I wanted to tackle, really. But I appreciate you every day.
Well, thank you.
This is the race is up for grabs, I believe. I'm not ready to throw in the towel. I still think that policies matter. And I think I'm not the only one out here who thinks that.
Yeah. And a couple of things I want to ask you, and then I want Tim and Sean to have a chance to talk to you. First of all, this is not a place for anti-Trump vibes or anti-Harris vibes. I'm sorry you're feeling that way, but we strive every day to have equal vibes all around, and hopefully we'll do a better job. And is this a tougher race against Harris than it was against Biden? And if so, why?
Absolutely. I mean, she's got a movement behind her. She's not Biden. I think I really worry about young voters coming out to vote for her. And I see that group primarily as voters who don't really understand what's really going on with the economy, what's really going on with illegal immigration, and how I see it as adversely affecting so much of our country, our education system. So yeah, I mean,
Okay.
it's a much.
Yeah. Tim, question for Ann, and
Well-
don't send bad vibes her way.
Yeah. No, I'd say first, if anybody wants to come on here and say that I'm their advocate, like Sean is for Ann, you should be the next person to raise your hand. Thank you. But
You're fine. You're fine, brother.
my question for you, Ann, is like, is there,
Yeah,
as the switch from Biden to Harris happened and we have a new ticket on the Democratic side now, is there anything that you have a positive perception of after that switch? Now that it is not Joe Biden at the top of the ticket, is there anything nice to say about that ticket?
I think.
Not to put you on the
I really
spot, and if it's not, it's not. But I'm always curious about that question of like perceptually, is there anything that breaks through to you that's like, I find this interesting about them, or this is, their backgrounds are persuasive, or anything like that? And the answer is no. The answer is no.
Well, I think she's a woman, and so I think that matters to a lot of people. Yeah, I mean they're a racially and genderly balanced ticket, and I think that's not a bad thing. And Tim, I'll say to you, we really have enjoyed listening to you too. And I heard you on TV, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's Tim, my friend. So it's not just all y'all are great.
And thank you for joining in. Appreciate it. Come back regularly. Pete Sullivan, come on in. Tell us who you're supporting, where you are, and ask away.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. I am from Connecticut, and I voted in 2016. I voted for Gary Johnson. In 2020, I voted for Biden, and this year I'll probably vote for a third party, not because I want anyone to win, but I want more third party possibilities. And since I'm in Connecticut, I'm not going to throw the election with my vote.
Pete, who would you vote for if you lived in Pennsylvania?
I'd have to vote for Harris.
Why?
Connecticut.
But I'm in Connecticut.
Yeah.
But,
why would you have to vote for Harris?
If I was like I could be the vote, I'd have to vote for Harris, because what it comes down to, I agree. I'm a conservative, by the way. I was glad we got the 3 Supreme Court justices. I was glad Roe versus Wade was overturned. But I'm politically homeless right now, because what it comes down to is policies can't matter if we don't have a democracy. And there's no way that I can follow somebody who, like, you had Ed Rogers on yesterday, right? And I was listening to it, and he's like, yeah, we have these great, you could take Harris down with every policy she has. You could take her down, but he's like, but our candidate is half cocked. Okay, this man's going to have the nuclear codes. Okay, it's very disturbing to me that he wants to pardon people who participated in January 6th, that he continues to perpetrate a lie and aggravate a lot of our fellow citizens.
Pete, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I want to get some other folks in, but I just want to follow up with you here. If President Trump saw this and called you and said, Pete, I got you your 3 Supreme Court justices. I got you Roe versus Wade overturned. I got you less regulation. I want to win your vote this time and get you to move to Pennsylvania. Forget the Pennsylvania part. Could he say anything to win your vote?
I would say to him, I could survive 4 years of Harris. I can't survive when there's no democracy left because of you. No, there'll be no chance for me.
Sean, Sean, go ahead. And
Look,
Tim just grins.
I would just say this real quickly. Look, we had 4 years. All of those accomplishments happened because of leadership. All of the stuff. I mean, look at what happened overseas. You want to talk about the nuke codes. Russia didn't annex land for how many, in a bipartisan way, how many administrations? The North Koreans weren't as provocative. Iran wasn't going after Hamas. The Chinese weren't as provocative in the South China Sea. The bottom line is, you can say what you will. And I know I'm reading a few of the things in the chat here, but the bottom line is, we were a safer place. They might have been scared of Trump. They might have thought he was unpredictable, but the bottom line is, he kept us safer than we are now. We're talking about spending millions. You want to talk about the nuclear codes. Look what's happening. We've got we've got part of the fleet deploying to the Middle East because of a potential escalation of conflict over in the Middle East. You've got Russia continuing to bleed us dry through the action they took in Ukraine. And you're talking about concern for an administration that's going to continue those policies. I think the record speaks for itself.
I think part of the problem here is that we're giving a lot of credit to Donald Trump just because of world events. He did not control all these world events. I agree. He's unpredictable. He took out.
Pete, I sat with him at Mar-a-Lago when he looked at Xi and said, "Hey, I just had to excuse myself because this is a guy who I know." I sat in the room with enough of them. They were scared of the guy.
I agree.
They thought he was unpredictable. So you can't have it both ways.
But you can't say that. You can't, but this is the thing. You can't give all, you're attributing it sounds like what Trump says when he says, hey, if once I get in there in 2 weeks, it's going to be solved. Listen, I almost want him to win because he's not going to be able to pull all this stuff off. The bottom line is you're giving way too much credit. I agree when he's unpredictable, when he's taking out people in the Middle East with a drone strike. Listen, don't mess with me. I get that part. But he also continually unravels our democracy, and we cannot. I can be intellectually honest and say, yeah, Harris is not. But neither is Trump.
With all due respect, this unraveling of the democracy, you had the Democratic Party and their affiliates last night kick Robert F. Kennedy off a ballot in New York. They undid their primary system. You want to talk about undemocratic? I mean, this is a party on the other side that has done more undemocratic things in the last 3 years, and yet they want to talk about democracy under attack. They've shut people out. They pushed out a nominee over and over again. I don't.
We got to warn the affiliate. We got to warn the affiliates. We're going to run a little bit over.
Yeah.
Then Tim.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Pete.
I just have to say this: when you have people hunting down the vice president, and the president sat there for 2 hours watching it in the dining room, and then he comes out and says, "This is what happens when patriots are robbed of an election." I'm sorry, you were disqualified. And Sean, I am a conservative, but the bottom line is you cannot pretzel twist yourself into a way to excuse this. I can say Harris is not good for this country, but we can survive 4 years. We cannot survive someone who continually undermines the democracy. And I want a good conservative. I wish Haley was there. I wish, back in the days when Romney was here, I wish we could have people I want to vote for a conservative more than anything. But you cannot vote for someone. You can't be intellectually dishonest and say that. I'm sorry. I respect you. I do.
Pete, thank you. Tim, real quick. Pete,
I was just gonna, Pete, I think you answered my question that I had of you, which is if you had a Haley or a DeSantis on the ticket, would you be voting for Haley or DeSantis most likely?
But yeah, Haley, yeah.
Yeah. So that's my question. And just like on the January 6th, I understand this is like a new Republican talking point, but like to draw some false equivalence between what happened, which Pete just outlined very graphically, and the ballot measure process in a state that Robert F. Kennedy can't meet because he doesn't have a good organization, or the Democrats following their policy of how they nominate a candidate as if it's a democracy issue is just like doesn't hold water. I get Republicans need something to push back on, but I find it ridiculous.
Pete, how'd you find out about morning meeting?
I've been following you. I've listened to Smirkanish. I read your books. I find you, sir, to be a very intellectually honest person, and I thank you for this platform.
Thank you. Bring all your friends next time. All right. Thanks everybody for joining. Great involvement. We see some things in the chat from some experts, including Alex. This program is going to become the place to go to learn what ads are on TV in the battleground states and how much the parties are spending by crowdsourcing that. More on that soon. I'll be back at 3:00 with an unnamed episode of my unnamed show on Two-Way. So look for information on that. We're going to be talking about the polls and the convention and some other stuff in my reporting. Thanks to everybody. Tim, Sean, see you guys tomorrow. Pete, thank you. Everybody else with questions. 9 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow. Same bad time, same bad channel. I'll see you at 3. Have a good day.